Inference Plus Story Short Number 11, Series B. Jimmy Pliers, also known as Jimmy the Dentist, was not, in fact, actually a dentist. He was not a doctor of any kind. His education had ended abruptly in the middle of the 10th grade, when he seized a business opportunity to supply his peers with a product they very much desired. As he told the associate principal on his way out the front door, "Don't hate the player, hate the game." Apparently, she hated both the player and the game because he found himself expelled for 187 instructional days. By the time he was permitted back from exile, he no longer had any desire to go to school. He had moved forward, pursuing his education at the College of Fast Tony, where the only math he needed to know was measured in grams. He'd never been much of a reader, which was just fine with Fast Tony, who valued loyalty more than diplomas. Before the night with the Giordano boys, Jimmy had been known as Little Jimmy. There were several guys named Jimmy who worked for Fast Tony. Since Jimmy was the physically smallest of the Jimmys, Little Jimmy was the obvious moniker. However, that night he'd proved himself both brutal and inventive, elevating his status and necessitating a name change. He was promoted to capo and quickly learned that the quickest route to further advancement was with a pair of gloved hands and a toolbox. "So what if he's not the brightest crayon in the box?" Fast Tony said with a shrug. Jimmy Pliers went where you told him to go, did what you told him to do, and most importantly, didn't ask too many questions. He wasn't overly ambitious and was as loyal as a golden retriever. As far as Tony was concerned, Jimmy deserved Employee of the Month, if such an award had been part of his group's human resources plan. When Fast Tony's sister-in-law, Patty, started making noise about talking to the DEA, he knew just the man for the job. After all, it was something of a sensitive matter, being his wife's sister and all. He slipped the usual piece of paper into Jimmy's hand and, giving him a grim nod, sent him to do his work. When Patty strolled in the front door of Tony's house, uninvited as usual, the next morning, and helped herself to a glass of orange juice, Tony's first thought was that he needed to lay off using his own product. His second thought was that all the paranormal crap his wife watched on Lifetime might have something to it. His third thought was of Jimmy, who he called in immediately for a one-to-one meeting because obviously orders had not been followed and that simply would not do. "So I woke up this morning and guess who was drinking my orange juice," Tony said, face turning a shade of purpley red that Jimmy knew preceded an explosive rage. "I don't know," Jimmy said, genuinely baffled. "Who?" "A certain blonde sister-in-law who was supposed to take a nice long trip to the bottom of the river," Tony snarled. "Janie's got two sisters?" Jimmy asked. "Just one," Tony said. The face was all purple now, no hint of red. "She's supposed to have no sisters. How'd you manage to screw this up?" "I went right where you said on the paper," Ginny said earnestly. 1535 Everglade Drive. Went inside, found the blonde lady, one clean shot to the head, took her to the river, dropped her in, just like you said." Tony closed his eyes and took a deep breath. "You still got that paper?" Jimmy dug around in his jacket pocket and pulled out the crumpled scrap. Tony smoothed it out and looked at it before turning it around and pushing it close to Jimmy's face. "What does it say on the paper?" 1535, Jimmy began, then paused. "Oh, Evergreen Drive."